All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the first session of the Parkland Workforce Collaborative. We are so happy that you're all here and hope this is really helpful to you. So I'm Amy Densmore. I'm the Director of Apprenticeships in the Workforce Development Department at Parkland. These sessions are meant to be interactive and engaging, so we'll try and keep the presentations under 30 minutes as often as we can and to leave plenty of time for engagement and discussion. But please pop in to ask questions or share feedback as we go along. So I'm going to frame our conversation today. We're going to talk about the generations in the workforce, their traits, why they are the way they are. But I want to be intentional about saying that the generalizations about a specific group or demographic of people are their exceptions, right? We don't all fit that same mold. So please don't worry if a few of these aspects of your generation don't apply to you. Would expect that. But each generation brings its own values, experiences, and perspectives that have been shaped by the world that they grew up in. It's natural for older generations to compare themselves to younger ones, not always in a positive way. The traits I'm going to share today are not good or bad, right or wrong. They just are. And so, younger generations typically challenge the status quo, which sparks innovation and progress, also rage maybe among older generations, but it's how we evolve, right, as a society. And then older generations are going to provide wisdom and lived experiences to help guide younger generations. So it's all a really beautiful system, especially when you're able to look at it that way and set aside frustrations. But I think understanding why people are a certain way can help with empathy, help generate empathy. So the vast majority of the workforce today is represented by 4 generations. We'll start on the right side of this graphic. Baby boomers are about 60 to their upper 70s. Gen X, or Generation X, is in their mid 40s to about 60 years old. Millennials are in their late 20s to early 40s. I know there's still a trend to blame millennials, and it's not us. We're old now. We're older. We're maturer now is what I should say. Millennials represent 75% of the global workforce. Gen Z or Generation Z hasn't fully entered the workforce yet. Their youngest members are preteens, about 12, up to their late 20s. So I think it's interesting to note that it's specifically in the US, baby boomers make up a quarter of the labor force right now. Gen X is 33%, and millennials is 35%. So it's only 6% of Gen Z right now, but more every day. So talk about each of these generations, and we'll start with baby boomers again. So the Vietnam War and the Civil Rights Movement plus Watergate collectively shaped boomers into a generation that values activism, questions authority, and seeks social and political accountability. Their experiences with those major historical events contributed to their leadership style, which you will often see as a strong sense of justice, fairness, and a desire for societal improvement. Baby boomers are motivated by company loyalty and teamwork, and they have a very strong sense of duty. So fulfilling their commitment to their companies can be very important to them. This will not be a surprise. Baby boomers prefer in-person communication, including face-to-face conversations and phone calls. Overall, this generation believes very strongly that achievement comes after paying one's dues, so earning your place, right? And interestingly enough, almost half, 49% of baby boomers expect to or are already working past the age of 70 or do not plan to retire at all. Many do not have any savings, don't have any retirement plans or funding. That's pretty common. So Gen X was shaped by the AIDS epidemic, the fall of the Berlin Wall, and of course the dot-com boom. So these events reinforce their independent mindset and practical approach to life. while they learn to navigate crises and uncertainty on their own. For the most part, this is where we started to see all adults in the household working. So latchkey kids term defines Gen X to start, and then each generation after, because now, of course, everyone needs to work in the household for the most part. But they rejected the overwork culture that they saw in their boomer parents. So they invented the work-life balance. I think this is an interesting side note. There's some really great research on mental health in baby boomers and even older generations, and how they may have been masking depression by working. So don't want to go to a family event that's uncomfortable because of unresolved issues. You have to work. Don't want to have an issue at home. I'll go to work instead of facing that, instead of handling that. And so I think that's really interesting. Should look into that, especially given the mindset on mental health at that time. So Gen X entered the workforce in the late 90s as the rise of the internet was happening, and that makes them pioneers of adopting and leveraging technology. Gen X is also distrustful of systems, and so they have learned to work outside of them or to create their own. If you look at the percentage of generations that are startup founders, you'll find that the largest percentage is Gen X at 55%, working outside the system, right? They also have the most homeschooled children for non-religious reasons. Gen X favors diversity. They are quick to move on if their employer fails to meet their needs. And they are resistant to change at work if it impacts their personal lives. Just saw Melissa's comment, seasoned. I like that. So millennials, currently the largest share of the individuals in the workforce. Columbine shifted how millennials viewed safety in public spaces, especially schools. So millennials began advocating for solutions to social issues like gun control, mental health, and bullying. The 9/11 attacks emphasized millennials' awareness of global interconnectedness. And then the economic aftermath of 9/11 influenced millennials entering the workforce, highlighting the need for caution and adaptability in a volatile job market. So millennials grew up during the explosion of the internet and transitioned from dial-up to broadband, and also witnessing the birth of social media. So platforms like MySpace and Facebook delivered instant feedback. It also made millennials adept with evolving technology so that they could pioneer the gig economy, Uber, TaskRabbit, Grubhub, and remote work as well. The internet also made millennials highly resourceful problem solvers because they are comfortable with self-directed learning and multitasking and information at the fingertips, right? Millennials remember going to the library to do research for a paper, and then also possibly being in college or later years of K-12 where they could do it all online. So lots of transition there for millennials. They are motivated by responsibility. Also, the quality of their manager is directly impactful to their motivation level. Or they are also motivated by unique work experiences. Again, no surprise on the communication style, digital. Millennials like IMs, texts, and emails. Also for millennials, all the adults in the household likely worked, so kids are taking care of themselves after school and younger siblings. And so that's why we see these trends from Gen X and millennials as parents to Gen Z, where they've likely overparented because they didn't want their kids to have to do all the things that they had to do growing up. They saw it as a negative. But when we swung that far to overparenting, that's why you're seeing people coming in to jobs, younger employees who can't possibly work through a process, who can't troubleshoot. And so that's something that we're definitely teaching them in classes at Parkland, and I'm sure that you're teaching in the workplace as well. So again, these are generalizations. I'm certain there are a number of Gen Z folks who are able to do these things, but overall, not. So speaking of Gen Z, they grew up in a post 9/11 world. Constant focus on security and threat preparedness. And so that heightened their awareness of mental health challenges. They saw the impact the Great Recession had on their families through layoffs, foreclosures, possibly even homelessness. They saw their older siblings move back home after completing college because of the recession, student debt, and the job market. And so they witnessed the instability of traditional career paths, which pushed them to embrace entrepreneurship and side hustles because then they have complete control over their income. That also makes them risk adverse, very debt adverse. So that's why so many are choosing not to go to college if they don't have a way to pay for it. They are, let's see, Gen Z is the first generation to grow up with smartphones. And we, see that impact every day. Also, first generation to grow up with social media and high-speed internet in their daily lives. Kind of jealous of that one. I remember dial-up vividly. So growing up with Google, YouTube, and other platforms like that, Gen Z expects instant answers and instant feedback. Social media shaped their preferences for visual, concise, and authentic content. Authentic content is interesting. I learned years ago at a conference that Gen Z is more likely to trust a so-so quality from a cell phone photo, a so-so quality photo from a cell phone, over a professional photograph because they feel that professional photograph is manufactured, probably fake, it's staged. So they trust what is authentic, even if it's not polished. Let's see. Gen Z is motivated by diversity, personalization, individuality, and creativity. So their communication style is social media, Snapchat, rest in peace TikTok, text, instant messages, that type. So they self-identify as digital device addicts, valuing independence and individuality. And they prefer to work with millennial managers, innovative coworkers, and they really like new technologies. So a couple statistics for you that I think are really impactful. 80%, 4 out of 5 members of the Gen Z generation believe that the government and employers should subsidize, pay full tuition, or provide direct training for employees. 4 out of 5. 2/3 of them want to work at companies where they can learn skills to advance their careers. So they want mentorship, apprenticeship, internship with intentional pathways forward and upward. They want a curated experience. And I took that curated term from my team leader, Alicia Beck. She's on the call here, and she's going to present on managing Gen Z in May. I think that'll be a super interesting topic to take this even farther and some tips and strategies for getting the best work out of Gen Z and supporting them in the way they need to be supported. So customize everything. I always reference the Starbucks menu. So when we're thinking about vacations, dining experiences, even work, they want to be able to choose their half calf oat milk latte with the half shot of caramel and 2 shots of chocolate with extra foam. I don't actually drink coffee, so if that made no sense, I apologize, but you get the point, right? Like they want to be very specific and have that level of personalization. So take a look at this. This is a fairly new graphic I took from a blog I subscribe to. What does this say to you? And maybe not your first thought, but your second or third thought. What do you, please, I would love to hear from you. Oh, Taylor says TikTok is still active. Okay, sorry. I don't actually have it. I'm a proper millennial. I don't have TikTok. So any thoughts on this graphic here? I think the Gen Z thinking that $588,000 is the minimum to be successful says so much. It talks about, it reinforces what they grew up with the housing crisis, or with really the Great Recession, with being overparented too, and not necessarily learning the value of money. Many of them don't work, haven't had jobs in high school. So coming out of that at 18 years old, going to college and trying to think of how much money they're going to need to live the life they want to live is a really unreasonable number, but they don't understand that. So I thought I heard someone come off mic. Do you want to share thoughts?
Me. I also, that's a huge number, and I wonder what their frame of reference was that from. And then interesting to me as well that Gen X, and maybe because they are a little bit older, so they're in a little bit more experienced roles, is higher than millennials. But I know the millennial generation is mostly working on debt and trying to figure out how to pay off school or anything that they might have had from house payments, and they're full-fledged into the kid realm. So, but that was interesting that that was lower than Gen X to me.
Millennials also have created the share economy, right? So you don't need as much money when you're sharing cars, sharing homes, sharing anything really. If you have one in a group of friends, or a website that supports that sharing. Other thoughts? Okay, we'll move on.
I was going to
Thanks,
say,
Kate.
I have one thing to talk about, more specific to Gen Z, and I think it is, like you said, that they were born in the social media era, and they spend most of their time on YouTube and all the social platforms. And on the social platforms, there's a lot of unrealistic expectations for wages made and created. So a lot of these individuals think that they can just become, by posting actively on social media, that they can become social media influencers and get all the sponsorship and the endorsements, which could potentially land them, half a million a year, but very unlikely if you don't have the skills to do so. But yeah, I think it's just represented by the unrealistic expectations.
Great point, Taylor. Thank you. I see that in my feed too. Alicia.
I'd say the other, just to kind of go on what Taylor's saying, the other thing is the types of jobs that they're seeing as related to success. And so, reframing success also means reframing the types of jobs that are available to them and what they can get in those jobs that is what they're looking for overall, even outside of that 500K salary, looking at the other kinds of things that are important to Gen Z, and then showing them how other kinds of jobs will give them those things as well. So, I think that when we talk about apprenticeships, for example, just to tie it back to apprenticeships, because we all love apprenticeships, is that, one of the things that it does provide to them is, to Gen Z, is that work-life balance oftentimes, because they are learning and going to work. And they can also have sort of that curated pathway that they're looking for, because they have the direct pathway of, when you achieve these steps, you reach this level, then you achieve these steps, you reach this level. So I think that there's some real benefits to being able to provide other things to Gen Z that they're looking for outside that salary, but they have to be shown those opportunities because they aren't going to know that they exist.
And I think too, when they've lived that curated lifestyle up to a certain age with their parents, when they've gotten their, daily Starbucks on the way to school, in some cases, they get, highlighted hair, expensive hairstylists, those services early on. Then when it's now time to pay for it, they have no idea what those cost and what their parents have had to do to get to an income level to provide those. Melissa, you've got your hand up.
Thanks, Amy. And I just wanted to share that, to Alicia, your point, I think that jobs in general have just expanded and exploded so much in this chart. You know, the people who were in the boomer generation, they had a much more limited worldview. They could, you know, grow up to be a handful of things, you know. Gen X, which is my generation, I never imagined that one day people could grow up to be, you know, web architects or user experience technologists or radiation technologists. You know what I mean? Like there's just more jobs now than there were in the past. People have so much choice, and among those choices, actually, social media influencer does exist. It's kind of rare to get there, but the point is that there's so much choice that students today have that I didn't have when I was growing up, and I know that the boomers didn't have either. They were limited, I think, more limited than the kids today.
Absolutely. Thank you for those thoughts. And actually, we're going to touch on some of those things, whereas we zoom in on Gen Z. So since they're the biggest unknown, right? And these trends change over time. I've done this presentation for a few years, and in doing research for today, I found several traits that had shifted a little bit just in the last few years. So it's constantly evolving as each generation ages and we learn more about their different phases of life and their tendencies. So Gen Z is the biggest unknown here, with still another 6 years before they're all 18 and even more before they're in the workforce. So Gen Z wants the experience in all aspects of life. Their time at work is part of their life experience, part of their overall life, and they want it to have as much meaning and enjoyment as a Saturday night with friends or a family vacation or whatever that experience is. So they are looking for purpose, and they are looking to be treated well by their employer, to be cared for. And they also want work to be very convenient for them, which is not necessarily convenient for the employer, but it is important to accommodate them as much as possible. I'll talk about that just a little bit more on the next slide. But something I think is an important trend to note is mental health days are sick days. I know with my generation, we kind of would joke about that, like, oh, I'm going to take a mental health day, but you don't talk about that, right? You didn't tell your employer you needed a mental health day. Well, Gen Z thinks it is perfectly fine to tell you that, and they will. And they are very serious, and hopefully we're to a point now where that can be culturally acceptable because their mental health is one of their top priorities. So defining the path forward, both short and long term in their career field. So at what point, what skills do they need to master? What competencies do they need to demonstrate to get a pay raise? How long, or what, depending if it's time or if it's competency, at what point do they get a title change? When do they get more responsibility? So they want to know next week, next month, but they also want to know a year from now, 5 years from now. And so career advising, career counseling is pretty important as part of this as well, providing that as a service. Make an effort to share professional development opportunities if you can. And there are opportunities out there for every budget. Actually, that would probably be a really good future session. There's the Champaign Public Library does some great sessions, Small Business Development Center, Chamber, Regional Planning Commission, Parkland Community Education, as well as, you know, Parkland academic side, if you are able to accommodate credit courses and that fits the career path. But there's so many opportunities, whether they're free or affordable, or if you have the funding to do something like a degree, then they want that and they want it braided in to their work, to their career path. So I think this is kind of entertaining, and it depends on the culture of your organization, but Gen Z sees everybody as their equal. So when a vice president says they have an open door, when they're in a meeting where you're discussing a project, and Gen Z will assign that VP a task. They see nothing wrong with that. And in your organization, it may be fine. I think here, it probably would be okay at Parkland, But in some of those places, it's going to be a no-no. And that is why mentoring is so important. That is just one aspect of company culture, is the hierarchy and what you do and don't do, in addition to making sure that your new hires are invited to Taco Tuesday or to Ben's birthday party in the afternoon, or whatever the case may be. Making sure that they feel included and they know how to navigate the workplace is really important with mentoring. They want services, so they value additional services as much as their salary: career coaching, mentorship, tuition support. Some facilities are able to offer like a meal plan or provide dining services that they may or may not have to pay for. Therapy dog visits has been mentioned as something that they like. So it's all over the spectrum of what those additional services are and can be. It could be a vision plan with your health insurance, although most of them are still on their parents' insurance. It could be EAP for counseling, or maybe you're able to have a counselor visit the workplace periodically for people to chat with them. So think about all those possible services. And again, they vary in cost depending on how your organization is positioned financially. I love that Gen Z questions why things have to be this way. Why do I need to work from 8 to 5 in an office and at that specific time, Monday through Friday? I'm not customer facing. I want to work from 10 to 7, Tuesday through Saturday. And if it doesn't impact your business operations, let them try, because that matters to them and they're telling you that. They're taking the time to say, hey, this is how I live my best life. Can you accommodate it? And even if your inclination is no, try to think through it. Talk to upper leadership about it. Talk to HR, your colleagues. And in some cases, you can't accommodate it. You know, Parkland's a union shop. You have to take an hour lunch break. So we can't have someone take a 30-minute lunch break and leave a half hour early. You know, we're not able to do that for staff positions, but maybe you are, if someone needs to pick up their children or whatever the case may be. So that's really important to them. And they're going to question it. So just expect them to question it and explain it, because, you know, we're all very guilty, I think, of falling into, well, that's the way we've always done it. They want to feel connected to helping people and your mission. So it may be obvious to you how your organization helps people, but it may not be obvious to that employee, especially at more of an entry level. So help them understand how their work fits into your business's overall operations and how that directly impacts people. Caterpillar has had great success with their warehouse and associate apprenticeship program. I think a big piece of it is to help someone at that entry level understand that their good work, their mistakes, their attendance, all impacts CAT globally. It's an international operation, and you not showing up for work has an impact down the line. And they've seen a really big change in retention with that program. And I think that's one reason why, is so that they understand that they're important and they're needed. So you want to engage and retain Gen Z in the workplace. We've talked about some of this already, but I'll go through it real quick. If you have not attended any kind of training on inclusive work environments, do a deep dive on it. I'm not going to list all the specific ways, but there are some really easy things that you can do that create that environment that makes everyone feel welcome, that makes everyone feel included and leaves no one feeling excluded. And I will say that if you personally have never felt excluded in your workplace, then you should absolutely do the deep dive on it to help understand how others might feel excluded. We talked about being responsive to their needs. Being transparent and authentic is hugely important. Again, we talked about authenticity, but I think about, you know, my parents would say, if they didn't want to answer me and tell me no, they say, oh, we'll see about it. It's better to just say, no, we're not going to be able to do that, and tell them why. It's okay if your leadership has said, this is our policy, we don't allow remote work. Okay, but explain why, help them understand, and offer alternatives. Maybe there's a quiet place that they could work privately in the building one day a week, that instead of sharing a space, something like that. So but really trying to be as open and genuine as possible, because Gen Z brings their whole self to work. They bring all the things with them and don't necessarily know what's okay to share and what may not be okay to share. Signing a new mentor is awesome. Connecting to the mission, and we talked about being flexible. So go ahead and go on. Okay, here are some sources for you, some resources where I got some of this data and information. Kim Lear's my absolute favorite generationalist. She has a blog on Substack called Kids These Days, aptly named. And she doesn't send them out too often, maybe once a month, once every couple months, so it won't blow up your inbox if you subscribe to that, but really interesting stuff there. You can also find Kim as a guest on a number of podcasts and that kind of thing. And then the other three are authors. So Dr. Jean Twenge, Jason Dorsey, and Megan Gerhart have written some really engaging books. And then you can find them on, TED Talks, YouTube videos, different interviews, that kind of thing as well, or articles that they've written, book reviews. So lots of different resources out there if you would like to learn more. And then I have questions for conversation, but I would really love to just hear from you. If we don't need those questions, that's terrific. So what are your thoughts at this point? What's been most impactful to you that you've heard today?
For me, seeing the statistics on what each generation thinks is like a successful wage or livable wage, whatever those numbers were and how different they were, that was beneficial, because I don't think, at least the populations we see over here in the resource room, I don't know if they're thinking of it from that front end of, I want a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage, all these things, but I need to have this occupation to reach that. So that's kind of a good starting point for us over here, kind of checking in on that, like, what is your end goal here? And then where do we need to get you and where are you now? To kind of customize their pathway. So that was beneficial for me to kind of give me right there in one slide, wherever they fall, okay, talk about this number. Is this their number? Is it a different number? How do we get them to their number? So thank you, Amy.
Yeah, great feedback. Others?
Well, I think it's really great to have the information and to have it kind of clearly spelled out. I mean, I know that information's been out there and we've all seen it, bits and pieces of it, but I think it's a really important thing for our employers to realize, based on the age of their employees, maybe how they should be maybe customizing how they deal with them. And granted, like we're a chamber, we can't be like, okay, we're all going to work from home. But I guess we did during COVID. We did work from home and we managed to still, serve our members. But it's nice to keep in mind, that flexibility for different things, because people do need, I mean, I think of all the generations, everybody needs more of a work-life balance and the opportunity for flexibility. So I just think that's important to realize each of the important aspects of each generation.
Thanks, Mindy.
I think for me, I have a few facilities. I have one facility that has I would say they're not Gen X, right? They have worked for Caterpillar their entire lives. And the needs that they have, the requests that they have for insights and stuff matches exactly what you shown. In Champaign, it's a little different. We're all across the board, but as an organization, you can definitely see how they're trying to fit into those molds, like offering the better EAP and really highlighting that, because it is something that we've seen change with our applicant flow and the people that do come in, that those additional resources are needed and requested. So just to be able to see it that way, I appreciate that, Amy.
Absolutely. This is my favorite topic. I geek out on this, so it was amazing. I was able to limit myself to 25 minutes. It's just. So I'm curious to know if you have a mentorship program or an internship program, a new hire orientation program, anything like that, and how it's structured, if you find success in that. At Parkland, it varies depending on, the department, supervisor, what your onboarding experience looks like. We have recommendations from HR, but you kind of craft your own for your new hires. Nobody has a really great onboarding program.
In Caterpillar, Amy, we have various different programs. So in our division, which is logistics, for new hires that are support management roles, we have an ambassador program. It's a little bit like a mentorship / buddy kind of program for the first 6 months. Helps you build your network, and that goes alongside the standard orientation that you would have as part of Caterpillar about the policies, procedures, that kind of thing. Our internship program has a completely different onboarding program. It is specific, obviously, to interns. I don't have a lot of insight to what that is because we have a whole separate early talent division that kind of look after them. But I know that they do a lot of activities, a lot of networking, a lot of socializing, lots of career building, as you would expect, tours of the different facilities, that kind of thing, which is slightly different to the onboarding that we give our other support and management. And then we have a mentoring program within Caterpillar that forms more of part of your professional development. It's open to everybody. And ordinarily your supervisor will help you identify a good mentor depending on your career aspirations. I'm not sure if that's helpful information or not, but it's pretty varied within Caterpillar, and the programs are specific to the different payrolls that we have. And then for hourly associates in our warehouse, we have a guardian program, but that's more focused towards safety, making sure that people come in and safety is our number one priority for them, showing them the ropes, slightly different to a training program. And they don't do the tours. They do get some career progression, but there's a lot less flexibility in terms of work schedules and things for hourly production, which is the bulk of our workforce. It's flexibility is very industry specific, and unfortunately, some roles just don't lend themselves well to alternative work schedules apart from 410s or 312s or weekend shifts.
Sure.
That's one of our challenges with the different generations coming through and their different aspirations and wanting that flexibility. Is how do we adapt to that as well?
Oh, you help make up for it with an awesome apprenticeship program. I think.
Yes, we do. Thank you, Amy.
No, thanks for the thoughts, Jenny. And Paige has said in the chat, Paige from Carl, that they have very specific onboarding programs and a preceptor or mentorship program with several areas depending on the occupation in the department. That could be an interesting session, as well as creating one of those or what those components might look like. Thank you. Has anyone had amazing success? Oh, I heard someone come off mic. Go ahead.
At United Rentals, we have a super safety focused onboarding program, regardless of the role, which specific PPE for new hires to let everybody else around them know that they're a new hire and maybe that they need a little bit more training or a little bit more patience on, where to stand or what to do or what applications they need to be doing. But we also have an apprenticeship program and a mentoring program, regardless of longevity of tenure with the company. You can get involved in that mentorship program to be a mentor or a mentee, to really try to help you achieve goals to get to the next level if that's what you choose to pursue.
Great. Do you feel like that's well utilized, Ben? Do people sign up for that?
Certainly, and I think getting the word out more will drive that user up more than it is now. I don't think I don't think many people know about it yet, and United Rentals is growing all the time. Like I think they're trying to get to like 40,000 employees within the next 2 years, and we're at like 28 right now.
Okay.
So there's just a lot of drive to try to develop that talent, to just make a better customer experience.
It's a great recruiting tool. Promote that mentorship
Certainly.
program.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm not going to have Alicia do her whole session on leading or managing Gen Z, but I am curious if any of you have any tips or tricks or things that you've learned that have been effective in your workplace with any generation. It doesn't have to be Gen Z, but. I hear different things as I go around to different employers. I heard one where we've got a couple very experienced folks who need to retire and aren't yet, and they have everything on paper and they hide it. So trying to get it so that they can train future people, but they want those secrets to go out with them. And I think that's just fascinating from our perspective, that that's how they, feel their value is on those papers, those notes, how to fix the specific machinery. That's their career right there, and they don't want to share it. So imagine that culture, trying to be a new employee within that.
I wouldn't say a specific generation, right? But we have a lot of change management in Champaign. We've gone through a lot of changes. We have a lot of changes that are upcoming, and that transparency, open, honest, getting them to be part of the solution has definitely helped Champaign in those big changes that we've had over the course of the last few years, and that we're looking forward to in the next 3. So.
You guys have an interesting program that lets employees suggest changes. Would you or Jenny talk about that, Tammy?
Yeah, it's CI, or continuous improvement. So our employees get to, it's all about leaning out the process, right? Making them more efficient, making the work, easier for the employee, beneficial to the customer. So yeah, if they have fresh eyes, maybe they've worked somewhere else and have seen that process before, we ask them to engage in that, right? They bring that concern or that solution or that identify that issue, and then work directly with them on a solution. And that's part of, their metrics as an employee here for performance-based bonuses. So not only do we want it, we reward them for that type of behavior.
And I know your process is really defined, like how many days they have to respond to it.
Yeah.
So an employee's guaranteed a response.
They have to, yeah. And if it's a safety response, it's within the first 24 hours, right? So there's different levels of those cards that we've identified. And everybody's engaged in that process. We review those cards as a management team every morning, as part of our morning meeting process, and make sure that those cards get closed out, that people are spoken to. It's not just as simple as you've worked the card, right? You have to prove that you went and you went to the individual, you engaged with the individual on a solution, and then working with them on communicating that solution.
So they
Jenny,
feel very heard.
Yeah, and Jenny, you can add anything I missed for that, but
no, you covered it.
Well, are there other thoughts anyone would like to share before we wrap up? So next month, February 18th, we will be featuring funding opportunities to upskill your workforce, including Cassandra Dunham, who's on this call. I like to call her Cashandra. And then Cassandra's from Regional Planning Commission. And Madeline Wolski is from the Small Business Development Center. And so they will talk about some different funding sources they have available if you would like to provide training or professional development to your existing workforce. So in the interim, please share this resource with your colleagues. Share ideas if you've heard something today and you think, wow, that'd be really great. I'd like to know more. Let us know. We'd love to find speakers to facilitate those topics for you. But thank you so much. Appreciate your time today. And I look forward to seeing you all on the 18th.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.